Welcome inside CenturyLink Arena to the aftermath of Front Street Fights 11, Sklavos vs. Johnson, presented by Bodybuilding.com, where indeed it was Cesar the Gunfighter Sklavos that walked out with the flyweight title in what an incredible night of fights from top to bottom. Of course, the amateur fights, we can't say enough about those. We're going to recap some of the fights for you right now. First fight of the night, only one to go the entire distance. Tim Cameron gets the unanimous decision over Jose Martinez. The scores in that one were 30-25, 28-27, 29-27. Again, all in favor of Tim Cameron. Mitch, you mentioned it at some point. Fans want to see knockouts. They got to see them.
Yeah, it was an absolutely exciting fight. There was a couple, amateur mistakes. Cage holding, there was a point deduction, But
here's Alden Ashcraft and Kyle Frost. That's the entire fight right there. That one took 7 seconds for Kyle Frost to get the victory and to improve his record from 2-0. And as you saw at the end, Alden Ashcraft very frustrated with his performance here tonight. Moving to the headline of the amateur undercard, it was another knockout. You saw the clip of it right there. John McComas over Vincent De La Fuente. He keeps those fists flying and ends up getting the KO victory. As you're going to see the stand-up right here, like I said, unrelenting, those lefts and rights. Catches him right there. It was that right. That one was all she wrote. Again, 2 knockouts right in a row.
Starched got, in these AMI rounds, their guards down, and when they get starched, it's all over. And it's fun to watch.
Moving on to the pro portion of the card, a couple themes we saw throughout the night. First 2 fights were pro debuts. Yep. Second 3 fights, well, it was the second 3 fights, so on and so forth there. The theme was, you wanted it, you're going to get it, courtesy of matchmaker Todd Carlson. Starting off with the pro debut of Paul Crawford and Jacob Hout. Unfortunately, we talked about the mistakes of Paul Crawford. You see it right there. You called it. Had he followed up in that choke slam, things might have been just a tad bit differently. But unfortunately, Paul Crawford unsuccessful in his debut as he taps out to Jacob Hout just 1:27 into round number 1. So hopefully the holes in his game he can clean up and get back here again soon.
Kudos to Jacob Hauk. He was really emotional. He hadn't had a win in a long time, and he had a good fight.
The second pro debut of the night, Michael Garcia. We talked about it. You want to see slams? Michael Garcia is going to provide it. You're going to see it right here as he is just going to lift David Rangel up into the air and down to the ground. And the slam heard and felt throughout CenturyLink Arena tonight. And this was the fight, as we mentioned, he was not the original opponent for David Rangel, but he wanted this fight from the get-go. He trained like he was going to get this fight. He got the fight, and he puts him to sleep 1:04 into round 2. When I say asleep, he was out cold.
Back and forth fight, and it finished with fireworks, and it was a great, back and forth fight, and it was fun to watch.
Speaking of fireworks, we told you the co-main event of the night was going to have fireworks. We got that as we saw Thiago Alves make the trip up from Salt Lake and Sao Paulo, Brazil as well to take on the White Mamba, returning home Josh Wick. It was that kick right there that leads up to this, the flying knee, and out goes Thiago Alves as Josh Wick pulls the TKO victory just 44 seconds into round number 2. Moving on to the main event of the night, Casey Johnson was told, be careful what you wish for by matchmaker Todd Carlson. He wished for it. This is what he got tonight.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable fight for one of the parties. The other party, not so good. He spent 4 rounds in the mounted position, getting elbows rained down. So Casey Johnson, better luck next time.
And the one thing you've got to admire about Casey Johnson, as much as he didn't want to, it almost happened in between round number 3 and round number 4. The fight was almost stopped then. He was not going to quit. He even up. There was nothing that was going to keep Casey Johnson from finishing this fight until, unfortunately, 1:05 into round number 4. Doc Carlson, for the concern of Casey Johnson, had no choice but to stop this fight, thus making Cesar Sklavos the Front Street Fights Flyweight Champion.
Yeah, Casey Johnson begged, pleaded, but it just didn't work. He did get one reprieve. He got one more round, and it just didn't go much further past that. And you have to think of the future about these fighters and their longevity, and cutting that scar tissue down and getting them to the hospital is more important than your ego.
And it definitely unpopular decision by some, favored by other, but the decision is what it was, and again made solely out of the concern for Casey Johnson, who I have no doubt we will see back here at some point. And obviously with Cesar Sklavos being the flyweight champion, we're going to see him back as well. Maybe a second match. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. Of course, that's not up to me. I just get here and spend a couple hours next to you every 3-4 months.
it wasn't a total blowout.
No.
It was just Caesar implemented the better game plan. So a lot of times when people say I would like to see a rematch, I say that was too lopsided. But this was lopsided in its own way. But if Casey goes back, regroups, it can potentially turn out different for him.
Definitely. There was lopsided, but then also there was no quit as well, too. So we'll see how this all plays out in the future. Speaking of the future, Mitch, what do you say we do this again sometime in May?
I'd love to.
All right. Well, if you want to find out when Front Street Fights 12 will take place and who will be on that card, make sure you follow us all over social media. Of course, Facebook.com/Front Street Fights, Twitter @FrontST We're also on Instagram. Of course, YouTube.com/Front Street Fights. And we got to thank B2 Digital, trading symbol BTG, for sponsoring tonight's Front Street Fights live YouTube stream. You can also find us on Snapchat as well. On behalf of Mitch Coats, the entire Front Street Fights crew, the entire CenturyLink Arena crew, and of course we have to thank the Cable One crew. My name is Matt Johnson, and we'll see you in May. Have a good night.